I got some letters and messages after the few sessions that people have gone through. I remembered a story. It seems a person was bitten by a scorpion in his home, in some dark corner. And he went to the doctor and asked for a medicine. So doctor gave an ointment and said, apply it where the scorpion has bitten you. And he went home and applied it on the wall. And came back and said, no improvement at all. Where did you apply? Where the scorpion had bitten. Then it should have helped you by now. Where did you apply exactly? Show me your leg. He said, not on the leg. I applied it on the wall. You said, applied where the scorpion has bitten me. And that is where it had bitten me, near the corner wall of the house. Some people said, Swami, I am trying to observe my mind, but all the time I am counting 9 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, again I missed. Again he starts. I did ask you to count 9 seconds. I asked you to observe the mind. Whether 9 seconds, 90 seconds, I didn't put that. I only gave you the example that day that if you hold for 9 seconds, that is called as dharana. If 9 into 9, you hold for whatever 1.5 minutes, that is dhyana. And if you continue this phase for 12.5 minutes, naturally it goes, it becomes samadhi on its own. Naturally it becomes samadhi. So it doesn't mean that you keep an alarm for 12.5 minutes and find out whether you got samadhi or not. That's not the way. Counting was not necessary. They got the message wrong. Applied the ointment on the wall. Started counting 9 seconds, multiplied by 9 seconds. Instead of thinking, instead of observing the mind and actually observing whether they're able to hold that mind. Then somebody else is saying, I'm holding the breath but finding it difficult to hold. What time should I hold? Before, after exhaling, inhaling? I said, holding the breath was not the exercise. Holding the mind was the exercise. Breath was the way to hold the mind. If your mind gets too restless, then hold the breath for some time. But holding breath and counting 9 is not what I told you to do. Did I say that? I said by chance, if you are holding your mind for 9 seconds, it is called dharana. It is as simple. Just to motivate you that it is not an hour-long process. It's not a day-long or a week-long effort. It is just a matter of 9 seconds. If you hold 9 seconds, any thought, even thought of gulab jamun or a samosa for 9 seconds is dharana only. These are all methods. These are all methods to attain something. That's what I told you. You know how to write. You can write a poem, you can write a story, you can write a letter. Writing is the basis. Likewise, these exercises are the basis of the higher idea of holding the mind steady and holding it pure. Don't have to count 9 seconds and hold breath and observe that you have held the breath for this. That is not, I'm not teaching you Hatha Yoga. How many minutes, start a competition, I held for 50 seconds, how many seconds did you hold for? That is not what was meant to be. What was meant was simply that you observe your mind and try to still it. If it runs too much, slow down your breathing, mind will calm down, then again observe the mind. If mind is still not controllable, okay, hold the breath for some time, again observe the mind. Observing the mind is the activity, the intention, not holding the breath, not counting the seconds. So some people wrote to me that I am counting seconds, the mind is getting deflected in counting the seconds. That was not to be the purpose in the first place. The ointment was to be applied on the leg, not on the wall. So understand it, the spirit of it. Just mere word and reciting it, my grandfather is a God, my uncle is God, my teacher is God, that is not the purpose. What it meant was try to sit down, settle down for some time. It will take a while for the mind to settle down and that is the best time is when you wake up in the morning, your mind is already calmer, it is dull. That is the best time to finish this meditation because you will find far more truths. But during the day it occupies, it gets entangled in so many other activities, it gets excited, agitated. Then asking him to sit down is very difficult. But nevertheless, you should try. If you find 10 minutes, you try then also. And holding breath is one trick to hold the mind for some time. But by holding the breath, actually your whole attention is on breath and not on the mind. Then you have lost the very plot, very purpose of why you have started this exercise. So get this concept correct. Idea is to sit down for longer time, settle down and try to observe your mind. Mind is too chanchala, is agitated, it is running around, then try to slow down your breathing and observe your breath for some time till the mind calms down. And even if required, you hold the breath for some time so that mind does not have enough energy to run around. That's all is the exercise. Holding the breath or counting seconds was not the purpose. Holding the mind, observing the mind and analyzing what is going on inside the mind is the main activity. So you practice only that. Don't have to go through the letter of the law. The spirit of the law is the most important. So understand that correctly. That is what I wanted to tell. Bishasvad datah pavate. The wind blows out of his fear. Bishodeti surya. The sun rises out of the fear. So if you don't follow the simple and nice way, then you have to be strict as a teacher. If he tells nicely, see, do this homework, study, do your assignments. You don't do it, what happens next day? Then teacher has to tell it in a stern voice, in a firm voice, that you have not followed, now better you follow. Some people have come up with this doubt, Swami, this is a very new teaching. Never before you have made us do all. No, I have said these things before also. In discourses it's been told, even earlier it has been told, that mind has to be controlled, mind is the basis of your liberation or your bondage, and how mind has to be pure, Chitta Shuddhi is important for realization. All these I have told before. It's just that I am telling it more emphatically now. Earlier it used to be one part of a long discourse which had many other issues to deal with. Because there are people of all kinds sitting, you see. There was an incoherent crowd. Somebody was only worried about how to deal with this samsara and the family problems and how Swami, devotion to Swami will help him cross over these issues at daily life. So for them there was a part of the discourse. For somebody, the discourse was meant for the moral conduct in the society, how one should control the mind and control the senses and behave in a way which will lead to morality and his happiness. For somebody else, there might be a discourse on some bit of leadership and people management. Then it also would have been about some Upanishadic truth. So it was a mixture of several things because the crowd was a mixture. So the discourse also was a mixture. But this crowd is not a mixture. Why this session is not open to everybody and anybody? Why it's only to a few people? It's not a mixture. That is why it's only that thought is coming out which is meant to be for this crowd. And all kinds of other stories and thoughts are not coming this moment. So this is a very concentrated class. It's a physics lecture class, let us say. We are obviously going to discuss physics. We are not going to discuss biosciences or chemistry over here. Likewise, these classes are Vedantic. They are about controlling the mind. They are about mastering the mind and thereby making your mind steady and pure, and finally through that attaining that sense of oneness, the realization. That is the subject, that is the topic of this class. So don't expect anything else for me to speak. I'm going to go on speaking about the same thing. So somebody said till 2 weeks ago you were about Bhakti Yoga. Well, Bhakti Yoga should also lead us to here. I told yes, if you are that Pariyupasate category, how can you become Samatva? How can you attain equanimity without realizing oneness? It's not possible. Till you know that you are one with the entire creation and everybody is you, it's not possible to develop the equanimity, it's not possible to get rid of duality. Simple as that. So therefore, bhakti has to lead to jnana, that is the end. Somebody asked, jnana is a path or jnana is a way or is the goal? I said, jnana, bhakti, both are, jnana yoga and bhakti yoga, both are paths, but ultimately goal is only jnana. Goal is not bhakti. Bhakti is the path. Goal is jnana only for all the paths, whether karma path, bhakti path, jnana path. The goal ultimately is atmanubhava, the realization of oneself. So that is very clear. So it's not that bhakti marga is now, suddenly some people are getting this feeling, is bhakti marga lova? That all this while I said, do bhajan, sing glory of the Lord. See, this is a very big risk of this Vedanta. It almost makes you feel that you are God, everything is God, then why do I need to worship another God? But if you firmly believe that, and you have realized that, perfectly okay, you don't have to worship anybody, not me, not anybody else. But till you have realized that, then you have to practice certain things. To keep your mind pure, Bhakti Marga is important. It makes you think of God, stops you from thinking of other things, unnecessary things, and always directs all your thoughts, actions, words towards God, which is a better thing to do than directing it towards the world. Steering wheel is the same. You turn right, it will go to the right side. You turn left, it will go to the left side. The car will go according to where you turn which direction you turn the wheel. So your mind turns towards God by bhajan and bhakti, all the better. Otherwise, it will naturally turn on the left side and go to the wrong road. So that is why bhakti is important. So it so happened that one person, Ramana Maharshi was pure Jnana Marga, Atma Vichara was his way. Go on inquiring who you are. As I told the other day, a story of how a man enters a marriage party and goes to the bride side and says, I am from the groom side. And the bride side starts looking after him very well. But somebody goes and inquires, actually, who are you? How are you related to the groom? And he has no answer, so he runs away from this side and enters the groom side and tells, I am from the bride side. So they also look after him very well, but after some time somebody gets a doubt and inquires, actually, how are you related to the bride? And again he has no answer and he leaves both the parties and runs away. That is the nature of the mind. Till you ask who you are, why are you here, what are you doing here, it will pretend that it is one of them. It is one of us. It is here because it has a purpose and it is a reason. The moment you point straight a finger at the mind and ask, why are you here? What are you doing here? Who invited you here? What is your role here? Whom are you related to? Are you me? Are you related to me? Are you mine? Or what? Then the mind starts becoming jittery. It wants to run away because it cannot tolerate this inquiry. That is the nature of Atma Vichara, is what he said. So I inquire and inquire, who am I, who am I, who am I? First mind will come and act that I am only you. What are you asking, who am I? Don't you know I am you? Then you ask some pointed questions to the mind. If you are me, then why you are so restless all the time? Divinity is supposed to be purity. Divinity is supposed to be steadiness. Divinity is supposed to be equanimity. Why are you always get agitated with small things? Why do you get excited about good things? Why do you go into lows of depressions? Why do you go into heights of excitements? Why do you behave like this if you are really me? Then mind will not have any answer. Because it cannot say that actually I am not. It is pretending to be me. It is pretending to behave as if it belongs to me. It is me, not even belongs to me. It is me. It wants to hide the truth that Atman is the truth. It wants to hide. So it behaves like that. The moment you start asking if you are really purity, if you are really Brahman, if you are the self, and if you are supposed to be my true self, which I know as Sanatanam, Niketanam, Nitya Shuddha, Buddha Mukta, Nirmala Swarupidam, then why these many impurities are there? Why do you think negatively about others? Why do you get angry? Why do you get irritated? Why do you get frustrated? Why do you get egoistic? Why do you get attached? Mind will not have an answer. It's like pointed questions to that fake relative who was trying to change sides and enjoy the hospitality of the marriage. So it gets scared then. Mind gets scared and it makes runs away, takes to its feet because it cannot tolerate the inquiry. That is the nature of our Ramana Maharshi was saying. So it so happened that, but Ramana Maharshi never said that other paths are not right. See, he never condemned other paths. There are other people who simply condemn. The Dvaita Bhava people will condemn the Advaita, or Advaita will sometimes look down upon Dvaita. But Ramana Maharshi, because the one who knows the truth, for him there are no doubts left. Chindyante sarva samshaya. He has no doubts left at all because he knows. So he knows, that's why for him, whether bhakti or jnana or karma, he did not say this is wrong, that is right. So somebody, a story is there, that somebody goes to Ramana Maharshi and says, Swamiji, he wants to test whether Ramana Maharshi, what does he think about the Bhakti Marga? He's a Vaishnavite. And told, I am a devotee of Narayana. No? And I have done all these, traveled across all the, whatever the Tirtha Sthalas are there, of Narayana. 106 of them you have to go and visit. What do you call them? Divya Pradeshas, Divya Deshams. So they go and visit everywhere, and then he comes and finally tells to Sri Ramana, I have traveled across all these things and I have done all this, I have done bhakti. What is your opinion about my spiritual growth? It's fine, bhakti is fine. Then he said, do you think when I die I will go to Vaikuntham? Then Sri Ramana says, yes, you'll go to Vaikuntha. He says, oh, so when I go to Vaikuntham, will I get to see Narayana? Yes, you'll get to see Narayana. Oh, when I get to see Narayana, will I be able to speak to him? Will he speak to me? Yes, if you go to Vaikuntha, meet Narayana, he will speak to you. Oh, when he speaks to me, what will he tell me? He will tell you to find out who am I. He tell you to find out, question yourself, who am I? That is what he'll tell you in Vaikuntha, he said. That is Ramana Maharshi's way of putting the Atma Vichara as the highest understanding. So, at the end of it, bhakti will purify the mind. Jnana will reveal the truth. So whether bhakti yogis are jnanis, yes, they can be, because they have developed so much intense love for God, they see only him or her everywhere. And at the end of it, they start feeling oneness with him. They say even Ramakrishna Paramahamsa developed a small tail when he was doing bhakti of Hanuman. He did all kinds of things. He became Radha, he donned women's dress, and Radha Bhakti he would do. But he did all these things because he was so, as I said, like the man on fire, who's been set on fire, he's running for water. That was his earnest feeling to reach God. So he tried everything. Somebody said, this way also you can attain God. He tried that way, couldn't find him. This way I can attain God. He tried that way. He tried everything. But at the end of it, he found out that God is only through self-enquiry. He also did that only at the end. Bhakti was there, but bhakti ultimately led him to jnana. So he always said this. Inside, you should be one with the self. Outside, as he said, you should serve others. Jiva, Shiva, Seva, he will say. In Jiva, there is Shiva, and therefore you should do Seva. That is the attitude outside. Inside is, I am one with divinity, Aham Brahmasmi. That is the attitude. But the moment you interact with the world, your interaction should be, in them also there is Brahman, and therefore I must serve them too, because everything is Brahman. That is the practical application of Vedantic understanding. So you will become a better servitor, a better volunteer, a better sevaka, a better devotee, if you develop this attitude that I am God, and then you see everything is God's. Therefore nobody needs to tell you that you must go and serve them and not hate them, and not harm them and not trouble them. There's no need to tell you, because you just know. Since you have seen it, tasmin drishte paravare, who has seen that, sarva samshaya chidyanti. All the doubts disappear for such a person. He clearly sees as the gooseberry on the palm. That's what they say. So that is why at the end of all this bhakti, jnana only should come. Now at the end of it, bhakti, you cannot become like this person who claims that I have traveled everywhere and I have seen everything. But what use is that? What use is that? Because at the end of it, you have not understood the main thing. Just now, Narsimurti was telling that there are many people conducting satsangs, online meetings, meditations, and things like that. What should be our stand towards that? I said, if that is helping somebody go towards enlightenment, then how does it matter? But if it's mere entertainment, then I don't think it is a nice thing to do. You simply sit 2 hours, listen to something, and then feel, oh, I have done my duty for the day, I have definitely finished my spiritual activity for the day. That doesn't help anybody. That does not help. But if that is actually leading to enlightenment, but a lot of people simply sit down and, they just want to pass time basically, time pass. They want to pass time, so what do? They sit down and go on discussing the same thing over and over again, and they're excited to tell their viewpoints, that how they look at it. It's all intellectual exercise. They want it to be acknowledged. Everybody should tell, oh, what a wonderful insight you brought. We never knew this thought. They get some kind of a kick. That is what I said, sattvic desires. You're discussing God, you're discussing good things, but at that purpose, somebody should appreciate the kind of insights I have developed about spirituality. Somebody should consider me also as a chota mota guru at least in this place. Somebody should at least acknowledge that I am growing spiritually, evolving. With that attitude also people put efforts. But that is why I said that is a gold chains. It's not as bad as a iron and a copper chain, but chain is a chain. It still binds you. It doesn't allow you to escape. So don't pass your time in entertaining yourself. If that swadhyaya means serious scriptural study, where you are really serious about picking up things from the thoughts from those rishis and trying to implement in your life. Simply reading, discussing, and you giving your own interpretations of things and thinking you also become one, some small-time Shankaracharya because you have been able to interpret it so well. It's not going to help. It's just going to be a sheer waste of time, entertainment. That is why they say, the one Brahmavida who knows Brahman, he becomes Nativadi. He speaks less. He doesn't need to speak. In fact, I don't feel like speaking most of the times. Almost now in one day, you ask them, even they ask for interview, I don't call them. This 5:30 to 8 is the only time I come. 6 till 6:30 I am quiet, 6:30, 7, till actually 7 I am quiet because he is speaking. After 7 only or somewhere there I speak. I speak for an hour. So in 24 hours of the day, I actually am speaking only for 1 hour. And that 1 hour is this satsang hour. 33 hours I am not speaking to anyone unnecessarily. Because some necessity is there. Now there are one more category. Maunam means you have to dumb charades for them. You have to, they leave everyone frustrated around them. They'll say, I'm following Maunam. Then you go and sit in one corner and don't interact with everybody. There is one person, Maunam person. Now, these are all those people who apply the ointment on the wall. That is why I'm telling. These kind of online satsangas and discussions, and each telling his point. Maybe this was what Shankaracharya meant, maybe that is what he meant. But nobody knows what was meant. That the intellectual stimulation, that is all it is. Like that, Maunam. Swami says, keep silence. So today I'm going to be extremely silent. It means that you make everybody's life hell around you. Because you're a part of the organization, you're supposed to be working, typing iPad, WhatsApp messages and sending it to me. Is that Maunam? It means my mind is continuously running 1000 RPM. But mouth is only shut. That's all. But mind, so much it is talking. In fact, it's talking more because what I could have explained in one sentence, now he needs 10 sentences to explain that. I have to type that many things. Then I have to read all that thing. Otherwise, it could have happened in the same 10 seconds. When you are speaking, I am listening, communication is over. Now he has to type, then it has to come to me, then I have to read it. If I don't understand, I have to write back to him. He has to write back to me again, and then I have to write back again. And what could have been over in 10 seconds without any misunderstanding, it goes on for 10 minutes with so much of misunderstanding. At the end of it, neither he has understood anything nor I have understood what has been spoken. It's all a waste of time. See, this kind of foolish practices we should not do. Counting 9 seconds, holding breath, doing maunam of this nature. The maunam is then complete maunam. Your silence means your silence from inside, not silence from outside. That is why it says bahiranga nahi, antaranga. If you are in office, you talk to everybody, but yet there is a silence inside you. But it also is possible that you are silent outside, but inside is all violent. All kinds of thoughts, emotions is like havoc inside. And what happens to the people around you? They are also in trouble because they can't communicate with you. You might be keeping some important, document with you or important message with you. And imagine the plight of everybody else who is not able to understand it, who get affected. So that kind of silence that is why I never put such tremendous restrictions, such tremendous austerities on any of the devotees, ever. That day he was telling, Upavasa I want to do and become close to Swami. What more Upavasa? This is Upavasa. This is where you are with me. That's all that is required. Now you put the right efforts in the right direction. Don't torture the body. By torturing body, nobody has attained God. Not one person. Many people do all kinds of fancy things. Some of these yogis, they torture the body. They burn it with hot rods. They sit on nails. They pour themselves with hot water. They torture the body to tell that body you are not there. You are not necessary. You are tempting me. I won't do, but there are people who even cut off their organs thinking that that is the way they can control mind, as if the organs were controlling the mind. Mind was controlling that. People do all kinds of things. They torture themselves in all possible ways, thinking that that way they'll attain self-realization. But the truth is that self-realization is only possible when the mind becomes pure and steady. For that, some constraint to the body, some restrictions are important. Not to eating too much, not sleeping too much, not talking too much, not engaging too much your senses in too many things of the world, keeping it generally withdrawn and intermittently as needed engaged in the world. After that again withdraw it back. To that extent, senses and body have to be engaged in the world. Otherwise, sharira madhyam kalu dharma sadha. Without body, you cannot attain dharma. If body was not important, yesterday I told of some hard sentences. What is the use of this body? Some people, so this body is not necessary. No, it is necessary. But give it only as much importance as it's supposed to get. No, don't give more importance than what it deserves. That's all it is. So take care of the body, don't torture it. You don't have to do monam and trouble yourself or others around. You don't have to go on, upavasa, vrata, to make sure, to think that you are getting pure. Yes, but if you eat sattvic food, eat limited weight at the right time, all these are good habits which will help the body stay healthy, mind stay calm. And then activities of the day. Don't overly engage yourself in too many activities. Reduce your interactions as less as possible. If it is necessary, do it. Ask your question. That's why I say whenever you speak, ask these questions to yourself. First question, is it truth? Will it harm anyone? Is it necessary? All the three, when it passes, 3 gates. Is it truth? Not truth, dump it. Why necessary? Then is it going to hurt anyone or harm anyone? No. If it's going to harm, stop it. Don't speak. Third is it necessary to speak? Even if it is truth, even if it's not going to harm anyone, is it necessary for me to speak right now? Not necessary. Don't speak. That's all you apply to all your senses. Eyes. Is it the truth that I am seeing? Will it affect me or anybody else, the way I look at them or the way they look at me? And finally, is it necessary? So that you see most of these yogis and dhyanis, they'll always keep their vision down. They don't keep looking all around and walking. They keep their focus on the path, or their vision is always down. Or they close their eyes when they are not moving around. That's all it is, because they want to cut off unnecessary interactions. Because everything that you see, that thought gets imprinted on the mind, isn't it? I saw, there is a speaker, there is a clock, it is going in continuously. You are taking so many thoughts. It means what? That much effort you have to put to remove all these things later. People say, clean. I say, keep clean. Why dirty it and then clean it? Keep it clean in the first place. There is no necessity of going and cleaning again. A hostel, teachers, wardens will go. Boys, clean up the room, girls, clean up the room. I am saying, don't clean. Keep clean. Always keep it clean. Don't allow the dirt to come in the first place. That solves half of your struggles. Otherwise, the dirt comes in, you careless, things get dirty. Then you have to put another days of effort to get rid of it. But if you are always careful that not allowing the dirt to come in through your eyes, ears, nose, mouth, skin, whatever, then your half the problem is solved. Half of your effort is taken care of. When you sit down for meditation, half of the junk is not to be removed at all, because it's not there in the first place. Only when it enters you through these senses, that is when it gets lodged in the mind somewhere. Somebody very interestingly said, today I was meditating and some very old memories came, which I never thought of it in the last whatever number of years, 25, 30 years. Some childhood. I told, that is what it means now. It means you're going deeper in your mind. There are levels, you see. Have you seen these rocks, sedimentary rocks? They study the age of the earth by looking at the sedimentary rocks, because they are various sediments. One sediment might have happened now, one maybe 500 years ago, before that 1,000 years ago, and 2,000 years ago. So you can see the layers in that. That's how mind is. Over many, many births, layers and sediments after sediments have been deposited. And the sum total of it is all your vasanas and samskaras which are there in you. But the reason for those vasanas and samskaras are deep embedded experiences and thoughts that you have collected over many births. So when you are, or a cupboard is there, let's say 10 shelves are there. The first shelf you clean, they are all the recent things which you generally use or don't use. Second shelf you go, they are the things of last year. Third shelf you go, it is the things of 2 years back. Fourth shelf you'll find something which was 5 years ago you had kept there. By the time you reach the lowest shelf, you might find things were there from your childhood. Likewise, your mind has layers and layers and layers of thoughts, and that's why the mind is what is like a cloth, piece of cloth. Thoughts are interwoven, that is what is mind is. Remove all the thoughts, mind disappears, I say, thread by thread. So all these thoughts are there in your mind. The more thought, the thicker the cloth. The dirtier thought, the dirtier the cloth. But even if it's white and positive like this, even then it's a cloth, it hides my vision. So every thought, so don't acquire more thoughts is my whole effort. Don't acquire unnecessary more thoughts. Limit your interactions. Keep it to only bare minimum, bare necessity, not beyond that. Avoid all the interactions. What will you do at the rest of the time? Observe your mind. I've given you an exercise. You will say, oh, if a mind is not involved in talking and eating and doing all kinds of things, then what should I do with the mind? Observe the mind during that time. That's a good exercise for you. So instead of spending that time in your day chatting with somebody and observing what she has worn and what necklace she has and what bangles she has, rather you observe yourself, isn't it? If you don't talk to two people in two extra people in one day without any necessity, what can you do those 20 minutes? You can actually observe yourself, where your mind is going and what are the things it's running. Has it become any cleaner? Has it become any steadier? See, that is the exercise. Why should you not benefit yourself by observing yourself? Why should you go and tell others about what they should do and they should not do? Why don't you use that time to observe yourself and improve yourself? That is the whole question I'm asking. So don't take to these foolish practices. Don't unnecessarily sleep too less or eat too less or don't eat at all or don't talk at all. Don't do all these kinds of foolish things. That is not the sadhana. Then you will get agitated, you will get disinterested with whole thing. You will feel this is so horrible, this is terrible. That's why I have not told that. I'm not saying give up all your clothing and jewelry and just wear this one robe and roam around, shave your head. I'm not saying don't wear chappals, don't wear this, don't wear watch, don't wear, eat food. I'm not saying any of these things because I know for sure that all these are only mediums and means to attain purity of mind. But if they are restricted and limited, that itself is good enough. You don't have to go to the extreme. I always say avoid the extremes. Ati sarvatra varjayet. Extremes are to be avoided everywhere. Even in sadhana, extremes have to be avoided. So just keep your interactions minimal. Don't talk unnecessary. Don't eat unnecessary. Don't sleep beyond what your body requires. Don't interact with too many people during the day if it is not necessary. So ask this question, is it what will lead me to truth? Is it necessary? If it's not, then just avoid them straight away. So it doesn't mean that tomorrow bhajan sadhar you have to have a bhajan practice, you have to talk to each other. You talk, that is a necessity. But after that practice, do you need to still gossip? Not necessary. So those is the viveka you have to use. This is unnecessary, this is okay, this is not okay. That practice if you keep doing and make it a habit is like sharpening the knife. And the knife can be used for anything. You can cut vegetables, cut fruits, cut your finger. But sharpening of the knife is this sharpening of the mind. That your mind becomes steady and pure and is obedient to you. It is obedient at the end. You can use the mind as you want, mind cannot use you as it wants. So keep it obedient. Keep it under check. Train the mind. Master the mind. That is the exercise. And don't do these kind of things. There is no competition. How many people can hold breath for how long? No competition of how many seconds you have held. I'm not going to ask you. It is not an assignment that how many questions you solved, how many questions you solved. This is an internal experience and you will know when you are improving. You will know. You don't have to post it on internet. You don't have to call upon 10 of your friends to explain to them your experiences. Some people send message to me, Swami, I saw these colors and lights and stars and things like that. So is it a progress or is it some kind of a obstruction, or what am I going through? Then I said, write down also that is an observation in your, my mind showed me some colors and things like that. Write it down. That is fine. See, that is why Ramana Maharshi was never encouraging people to get into this whole yogas and siddhis and things like that. Siddhi may come on the way. Suddenly I know what is going on in the other person's mind. It may just come to you. But should that be the way to deal with yourself later? A lot of people, you should see, these gurus will put up shops and put a board, mind reading, hand reading, all kinds of readings, palm reading, face reading. Also they will tell, these I have some kind of powers, through which they can remove spirits or even bring spirits. If you want to trouble somebody, you can hire these tantrics to send a spirit to the person, by paying 10,000 rupees, mild spirit, 20,000 wild spirit. You can choose a spirit as if they are put on a bookshelf, you can pick up, and many people get into that. They are all yoga brashtas, they are called. They got into yoga with the ultimate idea of reaching God. But on the way they got very excited. Why they got excited? Because their mind is still immature. It forgot the very purpose of why it started on the journey. And then it gets entangled and engaged in all kinds of things. So it so happened that once Yukteswar Giri Maharaj, Paramahamsa Yogananda's Guruji is. So he was a very simple man, living in a small ashram, cleaning his own place. It seemed so happened that once Paramahamsa Yogananda went there. He was a young, mature, apprentice kind of, not yet called a disciple also. But he went there, and he was, Yukteswar Giri was cleaning the room with a broom. And Paramahamsa Yogananda thought, oh, how could he clean? Please give me the broom. But in his thought, he had that what kind of Guruji he will be. He's cleaning his room, nobody's around him. So all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 checklist of Guru is not applicable. And Yukteswar Giri read the mind of this Paramahamsa Yogananda, that this fellow is doubting my, the genuinity of the whole thing. So he simply went to him because he told, what you think, those who clean the rooms, they are not jnanis. He said like this and just touched him gently. And that moment, the entire world around Paramahamsa Yogananda, as he describes, melted away. Melted away into a haze. And there were no objects with no fixed, shapes and borders. Everything was a continuum. He could read the mind of Paramahamsa Yogananda. Another occasion, it so happened that one disciple, when Yukteswar Giri was giving a lecture like this, one or two disciples one disciple was particularly not paying attention, and his thought was running somewhere else. And then Yukteswar Giri caught his thought and told, see, this is what you are thinking, and stop thinking, pay attention. So Paramahamsa Yogananda thought that, so Yukteswar Giri can read minds, this is a great power that he has. It means he can know anything and everything that is going on in the mind of the other person. At that time Yukteswar Giri explains to him saying that, though I can, but that is not how I do. This is just an exception because his mind was going somewhere and he would miss out on a very important upadesha. That's why I did this. But this is not my way, that I go on getting inside people's bodies and minds and find out what's going on. That is not. It may be natural to me, but it is not what I am here for. So when people get into all these kinds of paths, it's possible somebody had a very deep experience of great peace, and they thought it's a nice thing. But it need not go on the internet. It need not get posted on your social media. But most of the people now, that is what I'm saying, Sattvic Buddha. Sattvic thought means spiritual ambition, this is. The worldly ambitions are there, but these are spiritual ambitions. I should be known and seen as somebody who is evolving spiritually. And the moment I had a half a ounce of experience, I talk 10 to 20 tons of the explanation to everybody. You know what? I went through this, I went through this, I went through this. But that is not the approach. See, then your mind will always be excited. When is the next time I can experience this so that I can post again? Or I can talk to people again? That is not there. This is just your very deep personal experience. And keep it to yourself, because it will perhaps can frustrate the next person, if not encourage or motivate. Somebody may think, why should that fellow get this? Why am I not getting? Why unnecessarily go and disturb their thought process? Then instead of meditating on me or Atman, they'll be meditating on you. Why that fellow got this experience? That is not the right way. So these are some of the things to be avoided. So I have told you do's, and I am also telling you don'ts. Do's: keep yourself clean, place clean, find a quiet corner, nice time in the sense when you have less interactions, things are silent around, your mind won't get distracted by different sounds and other things which are happening, activities, so that can remain focused. And then use that time primarily to observe your mind, as long as you can comfortably do it. You will know, like when you eat food, you know when your stomach is full. Like that, when you are sitting down, you know at this point in time, after this it's not happening. So you can abandon then, whatever you have noted down or done thing, fine. Again you find another time, 10, 15, 20 minutes. So everybody's capacity is different, everybody's ability is different. So accordingly you practice. There's no need to compare notes. How many hours, how many minutes, how many seconds, no need of counting. Don't even make a record of how many minutes you sat today and how many minutes you sat next day, because that is one thought that will get inside your head and you will try to overdo yourself or outdo yourself every day. Just do as much is possible for that day. You sat down 5 minutes alone, you could sit. After 5 minutes, your mind is not letting you sit, fine. You say, okay, I'll come back again when mind is a little more peaceful. Then find another 5 minutes or 10 minutes during the day. Next day you sat and suddenly it felt so nice and you went off for 20 minutes on, you're on the run. All right, enjoy that also. Third day you couldn't sit even for half a minute, because whatever you tried, this mind has understood you're trying to control him. So it will also fight back, put up a good fight. So probably third day it won't just allow you to sit at all. All right. But you notice how this mind behaves, how this fake relative, puts up the drama. I am all yours. Actually, you and I are one. We are same. It will tell you all kinds of things, sometimes sweetly, sometimes harshly. But watch over this thing, that this fellow is fooling me. This mind is fooling me because it doesn't want to die. Who wants to die? Even mind doesn't want to die. It knows only when it dies can you know the truth. Its absence is your presence. So how can you have both? Air is there, then water cannot be there. Water is there, air cannot be there in the vessel. So as you start pouring of water, air has to go out. The mind doesn't want to leave you, because that is the only way it can bind you to this earth and earthly ways. That is the job given to the mind. Now, all jobs are given by Brahman only. So mind is doing its job. Its job is to bind you, not allow you to get free. That is mind's job. But the movements is beautiful. Ashtavakra. Nirvasanam harim društva tushnim vishayadantinaha. The moment the lion of desirelessness appears on the scene, the elephants of the senses go silent. The moment the lion of desirelessness appears, the elephants of all the senses, Vishaya Dantinaha, all elephants are compared to senses which are very big and powerful and mighty compared to, have you seen a group of elephants ravaging a forest? Oh, they are so terrible. But the moment a lion appears, even 100 elephants are there, all will tushni, shut up. They will not be able to talk. And what do? Palayante. They run away from the scene because that lion has appeared. Na shaktaste, if they are not able to run away, this is beautiful. They will run away, leaving the scene if possible. If not possible for them to run away, na shaktaste, what do? Sevante krutachatavaha. They become the servants of that lion and obey him. That is the power of a desireless man. He's like a lion. His desirelessness is the power of the lion. Hundreds of mighty elephants of senses will be there, elephantine senses. They all will shut up and run away. If they can't run away, they will shut up and obey. There is the power of man who is desireless. So, this mind is basically the conglomeration of all these senses. Mind is dealing with the senses. The moment mind shuts up, all the senses shut up. When you are sleeping, deep sleep, where his mind is not there, are any of the senses active? You don't even know that you are where you are sleeping. When you wake up only, you realize that you were sleeping till now. During the deep sleep, when the mind disappears, where are the senses? Do you have greed? Do you have anger? Do you have jealousy? Do you have attachments? Or even do you have detachment and other things? Nothing is there in the deep sleep because mind has disappeared. When will the mind disappear? When Atman rises like the lion on the scene. Why Atman rises? Because you're desireless. Desirelessness comes into you, all the senses in the mind will mind their job, in fact shut up and run away. And if you can't run away because you have kept a control over them, I need you to do my work tomorrow at the office, so you can't just run away. You will become obedient servants of mine. You command. That is why I keep on saying, reduce your thoughts, reduce your desire, reduce your thought, reduce your desire. So this week has been the exercise only to ensure that we are identifying our thoughts, all that unnecessary in the cupboard, unwanted, misfit. We are segregating now. Waste, how we segregate. Oh, this has to go to the junkyard. This has to be recycled. This has to be kept. That's all you are doing right now. So all the junk has to go out, you segregate it and put it into a waste box. All that is to be recycled, renewed, cleaned up. Keep it in the other bin. And all that which is good and has to be retained, keep it in the other bin. That's the exercise. 2 more days to go, you should finish your exercise. I'm not saying that all of you would have cleaned up the whole cupboard. It's possible that you all only would have gone till 2 shelves or 3 shelves, depending on how much effort you have put. It's equivalent to the effort that you have put. You have 10 shelf cupboard full of things. But you have only put effort to clean 2 shelves, then what can I do? If you have put all the effort to clean up all the things, according to me, 1 week of a 20 minutes per day observation of mind at different points, not same point, was good enough to clean up the cupboards of the entire past births, according to me. If you had done 7 days or 20 minutes of sincere effort of identifying your thoughts, by now you should have segregated, identified all that which you have accumulated for all the births that you have ever taken so far. But if you have not done that, then know for sure that some cupboards have not yet been cleaned up. So you have to keep this exercise going as in one. But I will move on to the next chapter because this week is what we have allowed ourselves to do this. I will move on to the next chapter and I explain to you how to get rid of the tamas, how to control the rajas, and how to encourage the sattva. That is the next phase. Throw away the tamas, the garbage, unwanted. Purify the rajas. We need rajas. Rajas is not that we don't need. You don't need the mouth and senses. No, you need it to live. But how to keep it pure and how to keep it not disturbing your purity. That is the rajasic. You have to keep it under control. Vishaya Dantina, keep all those elephants under your control. That is rajas. And then purity, how to develop very sattvic desires. Very, very sattvic, without expectations, without attachments. How to go on telling yourself. That is the next week's practice. It means what? More or less you have got rid of probably 2/3 of your junk because 2/3 of your thoughts are junk. So cupboard is like literally clean. A big part of you has already gone. It means your effort has got only so much. Now between the rajasic and sattvic, we will segregate and only rajasic we will work on improving the quality of that rajasic thought. Now I have to eat, but for what? So that my body is healthy, so that I can sing bhajan with strength. So that balahinena labhya, the atma cannot be attained by the weak. So body also should be strong. I want to wear something. Why do I have to wear a clean dress? No, it's all your rajasic which are related to actions or study or sing have to be purified, made it look towards sattvic. Right now it is all looking towards the tamasic. The pointer is this way. But you have to turn it towards the sattvic. And then sattvic thoughts which are there, you have to carefully analyze, is there any spiritual ambition in these thoughts? Or they are just pure atmano mokshartam jagat hitaya. Are they just as pure as this? Atmano Mokshartham, provided it's posted tomorrow on Facebook. Jagat Hitaya, provided it's there on Twitter and everywhere else. At least, if nothing else, at least ashram 10 people should know. I have done Jagat Hitaya and some Atmano Mokshartham. Then it is no sattvic thought. It is actually a rajasic thought in the garb of sattvic thought. So then you have to segregate that and then finally come down. According to me, finally, when you do this exercise, if you've done it honestly, you will not be left with more than 3 or 4 major thoughts. Minor thoughts will be there, but not more than 3 or 4 major thoughts. Imagine, cupboards, pick and span, all junk gone, just 4 items. Some old enmity of some classmate of second standard who stole your rubber and pencil, and till date that thought is there, lingering in your head. Yes, this is not, the more you dig, you'll find out. Some point of time, some student talked back to you. That was 5 years ago. That student has grown, evolved, and probably even realized by now. But you are stuck there. Two monks were crossing a river. A woman in desperation, she was carrying and pregnant, so she wanted to cross the river too. But river was in spate and water was more. So she was afraid of walking. So this one monk told the other monk, hey, our Guruji has told, don't look at women. You know that, apply the ointment on the wall type fellows. Don't look at the woman. The other monk said, this woman is pregnant, she needs to be taken across. We have to help him, we are monks, we used to help. No, women, we should not touch, we should not look at them. So this fellow turned his head the other way and walked across the river and crossed. Other monk took pity on this poor lady, lifted her in his arms and took her across the river and dropped her on the other side. The first monk was so agitated. The second monk has done his job and is peacefully continuing his journey. The first monk is so agitated. So the second monk asked him, why are you so agitated? No, why did you carry the woman across the river? He told, I carried and left her, but you are still carrying. Isn't it? He is still carrying it in his mind. The physical activity is over. This monk carried, left and done with that activity. But this other monk is still carrying it in his head. Those government files these are. That kind of junk is accumulated of vasanas and samskaras of births and births inside our heads. So some of them have to be simply discarded because these are over, these are expired, these are no more valid in this time. And it could have been a 1 month ago some argument with somebody, it is no more valid, done and dusted, over. Some of the things which you need for your daily living. What are your needs for daily living? I must live healthy, eat properly, sleep well and not unnecessary to talk to people. These are small desires, these are rajas only. Any activity is rajas. But these are all very simple desires. That is any sannyasi is allowed this. Maintaining a body is allowed for every sannyasi with bare minimum essentials. That is allowed. There is no harm and there is no sin in that. So anybody is allowed. So then your rajas thoughts will boil down to one, maintain the body. Simple one thought, isn't it? Second, keep my intelligence alert and awake. So keep my studies or keep my whatever professional activity or any other activity of the ashram, aware and awake about that. You should be good, sharp at that. I cannot forget my duties and obligations and responsibilities. That is second and third. If you have a family, or if you don't have a direct family, you have the whole family. Their welfare should be on your mind. Are they growing spiritually, physically, they are fit, they are healthy, they are all happy? Some bit of that thought. What is the fourth thought that could, at the best, you can have? The fourth thought could be, if Swami has given me any particular activity, how to please Swami, how to do it well, how to offer it to Swami. That is also sattvic. So actually, see, literally it boils down to 3. Your physical well-being, welfare, your welfare of your family immediate or otherwise the ashram and other things, and your whatever professional, or like you're a student or you're a band student or you're a teacher or you're a musician or you're anybody in the ashram, even a cleaner or a gatekeeper. That's all is your professional sphere. Just these are the thoughts. And all these are directed towards what? To please God. That is the overall thought. That's all is left in your head. Which sari, which food, nothing of these matter anymore. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, doesn't come. That's it. Your rajas is reduced to only so much. And only one sattva thought will be left at the end. What? I must somehow realize myself, because that is what Swami wants, that is what will redeem me, that is what will make me help Swami in his mission. When I become like him, I will also be able to help more people. I will find a way out of this dark cave, and I will also lead 10 others out of this dark cave. That's all is my role. And this all is life. That's all is life. Can you believe the life is just this much? It is so simple. Everything else is not life. Everything else is unwanted. It's just these things that's all that matters in life. Everything else does not matter. Everything is waste. Everything is junk. But still we hold on to it for our dear life. As if without them we cannot live. We hold on it so tightly to it. We don't want to give up. Even though we know it is not necessary. We still hold on to it for what? To ajnana. Ajnana makes us hold on to all these things. So none of these are necessary. It's like that woman, attached to the child, carries the dead body everywhere. Mother. Attachment. Child is dead, but she cannot think that it is dead. It wants to carry the body everywhere. That kind of attachments you have for these dead thoughts. And I know you only put effort, you only gain that, you only earn that. I know everything. But it's no more valid for your life. Just give it up. Your shoe of childhood is not fitting you anymore. That was your favorite shoe, favorite dress. I understand that. You saved a lot of pocket money and bought it. You pestered your parents and bought it. But it's no more useful to you. Let go. That's all I'm saying. Finally, your cupboard will be clean, your desks will be clean. Hardly 3 files or 4 files will be left on your desk to work. Plenty of space to work. No cobwebs, no spiders, no mosquitoes. Everything is clean, spick and span, bright and nice. Some of the offices, they can't even open the window because files are there. They can't even reach the window. How will light come in? So you remove everything. Have you noticed this? I have experienced this. That's why I'm saying all these things. Something you kept next to the window, an almirah or some object. And then you never opened the window for the rest of its life. And the room was always dark and dull. One fine day, for some reason, the almirah broke, or you sold it, or you shifted it and opened the window, and suddenly you feel so much relief. So much brightness is here. I did not know this. No, brightness was always there. Last 365 days it was there. But that unnecessary article that you kept, because of which you are not able to reach the window and open it, has obstructed that flow of light into you. That's all it is. So these kind of junk thoughts will be there. And don't be having any attachment. They're all dead thoughts. They were valid at some point in time. They were necessary. Perhaps they were your lifeline at some point in time. But not anymore. So just dump them, junk them. And then keep yourself very bare minimum thoughts, bare minimum interactions. And beyond that, only one thought. That is to realize yourself. So that is the idea of these meditation sessions, and you must practice it on your own with great shraddha, great bhakti, with great focus. And all of you have great focus, I know. See the band children, how well they can play. Some of the instruments, many people will find it difficult to learn and play. See amount of focus, they can stand 2-3 hours and play very focusedly. Every single note they're focusing on. You can sing bhajans with so much of focus. How is it possible if you did not have, if you tell, no Swami, I don't have concentration of mind, you are lying. You have concentration of mind. When you watch a nice movie, your whole mind is concentrated. You can remember the story, scene by scene, dialogue by dialogue. You have concentration. But you have used it for something else. I am telling you, use it for this. That's all. You shift manomulam. You shift the mind from that side to this side. Everything changes from worldly to spiritual. That is Baddha Jivana. This is Buddha Jivana. That is bonded life. This is aware life, Buddha. He said Buddha. His name Buddha was because he was aware. That awareness will come. With that awareness, you do any activity, no joy, no sorrow, no duality will touch you. You'll be able to go through the entire life without actually getting affected. Always equanimous. Imagine what a beautiful life that would be. Look at the promise at the end of this road. How much motivation that should be, that never I have to suffer in my life? Yes. And in lifetimes, you don't have to suffer. You mean never? Not a single day? Yes, not a single day. You mean not a single moment? Yes, not a single moment. That is what is awaiting at the other end of this road. And as I said, again I am repeating, your thresholds are so low, the low tide is there. Easier to cross over. Even if you don't know how to swim, you can walk over the water and reach the other end right now. Otherwise, when the water goes up, then you have to learn swimming or wait for a boatman. You cannot walk and cross. So it is that time and that situation. Please pay attention.
प्रेमामृत बरसाओ बाबा, प्रेमामृत बरसाओ बाबा, प्रेमामृत बरसाओ बाबा, प्रेमामृत बरसाओ बाबा, दया करो भगवान, दया करो भगवान, कृपा करो भगवान, कृपा करो, दया करो भगवान, दया करो भगवान, कृपा करो भगवान, कृपा करो भगवान। तुम्हारी दया बिन कैसा जीवन, 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 रोम रोम में बसने वाले राम, रोम में बसने वाले राम, रोम रोम में बसने वाले राम, रोम रोम में बसने वाले राम, जनन मरण से पार उतारो, 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 दया करो भगवान, दया करो भगवान, कृपा करो भगवान, कृपा करो भगवान, दया करो भगवान, दया करो भगवान, कृपा करो भगवान, कृपा करो प्रेमामृत बरसाओ बाबा, प्रेमामृत बरसाओ बाबा, दया करो भगवान, दया करो भगवान, कृपा करो भगवान, कृपा करो तुम्हारी दया बिन कैसा जीवन, तुम्हारी दया बिन कैसा जीवन, रोम रोम में प्रेमामृत बरसाओ,